HannaTalk. What is up, Bleach fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. It is a beautiful sunny morning right here in Melbourne, Australia. And of course, depending on whether you are in the world, whether it's nighttime, it's winter, it's autumn, doesn't really matter too much, because welcome to the channel right here, because today I am here with a very special guest. Now, he is an actor who's best known to fans as the voice of Yumi Chika from Bleach, with marking his return through the revival series in the 1,000-Year Blood War, but he's also been known across shows such as Zatch Bell, Duncan Roper, but in the last few years has worked on shows such as Sailor Moon Eternal, Bungo Stray Dogs, Stand By Me Doraemon, and his return to the Blue Exorcist series, and so much more. Please welcome back to the channel, the amazing Brian Beacock.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Brian. How about yourself?
I'm great. It's finally cooled down a bit here in Los Angeles, so I'm able to film in my living room without having the air conditioner on. So
I can imagine that, but that's fantastic. And of course, speaking about, as mentioned about Australia, of course, you were just recently at Oz Comic Con for the second time this year, which I have to mention, of course, to the listeners out there, once this interview is uploaded today, that I met you for the very first time in real life at Oz Comic Con, like earlier this year, when I did my panel for my channel this year.
That's right. Yeah. Did we meet in was it Adelaide or Melbourne?
It was Melbourne, Australia that we met at.
Yeah, and I just finished Brisbane and Sydney, and then last year, not too long ago, I was in Perth. So I've hit all the big cities in Australia. It was a great time. Oz Comic Con is a really great Comic Con.
Absolutely, and when I first heard the announcement that you were going to be traveling to the different parts of Australia, because I thought that you did that the first time round for Oz Comic Con, like earlier this year, because normally that's usually what happens with a lot of the guests that they get down for any of these big comic conventions, or sometimes they'll bring them down just for one location and not bring them across to that. What was it like to have to go back to Australia, like for the second time, like through Oz Comic Con stuff?
Well, actually, it was a last minute thing because one of the guests that they had an emergency, had to cancel last minute. So they contacted me. I was going to do Oz Comic Con next year, Sydney and Brisbane. And I had just emailed them just to kind of confirm that they'd see me next year. And they said, well, how would you like to come next week? So I packed and hopped on a plane. So it was very last minute, but it was so much fun. And I've always wanted to go to Sydney. You know, I've always wanted to see the Opera House. And I did the bridge climb, which was great. So it was really great. I love to travel anyway. So coming back to Australia they didn't have to pull my leg too hard.
Of course not. And of course, the biggest thing on that was, of course, like one of the biggest guest stars that they brought to Oz Comic Con, which I know they tried to get for earlier this year, was Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever get the chance to meet him or like have any interactions with him at any stage because you were on the same lineup?
Yeah, we hung out a little. We were on the same panels, but we hung out in the dressing room quite a bit. And what's funny is that we were just at LA Comic Con together, but I didn't see him there, but he was at that one as well. I mean, he's all over the world. He's traveling everywhere. But he's a really cool guy. We just exchanged a couple, niceties, and then he was off to his panel and I was off to mine.
That's fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. Because I know for a fact they tried to get him to come down for Supernova for Melbourne earlier this year, I think. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to because of scheduling conflicts at that time. And then when the announcement was made, they were bringing him down for Oz Comic Con, but they didn't manage to get him down for Melbourne, unfortunately, this year. And I just saw that and went like, darn it.
Right, and you just can't pop around wherever you want to go. You just can't pop over to Sydney, whenever. So, well, maybe they'll get him next time.
Maybe there's always next year. And I know for a fact that they're going to have the Christmas edition for Oz Comic Con later this year. They haven't announced who the guests are for that one, right, but they'll make the announcements closer to the date. And as many people will know, we've obviously got Supernova, we've got Oz Comic Con, and we've also got the new Comic Con that occurred in Australia that has just been relatively new, MetroCon as well, Metro Comic Con, which has just a brand new one that they've had since last year, where they've had David Harbour, they've had several of the actors from the Fallout TV show, they've had Bill Farmer, who most people remember as Goofy from the Disney cartoons. Matthew Waterson, who played Magneto in X-Men 97, and Brandon Routh, who played Superman, and of course across the entire Arrowverse as well. So we've got so much Comic-Cons popping up in Australia all over the place that they'll just get anybody at this stage.
Yeah, they sure will. I'm gonna actually try to come back for that Christmas one because that sounds like a blast. Where you've got a bunch of anime and DC universe characters, with Santa hats and all in Christmas themed cosplay. It sounds really cool.
I've been to it before. The first time that I ever went up there was for last year's one when they brought Jason Lebrecht, I think that's how his name is pronounced, Elizabeth Maxwell, and a couple of the other really big guest stars that they had up there as well. So it's a much smaller type of convention, obviously because it is close to Christmas, but it was fantastic though. And that was actually my first experience to Oz Comic Con before I went to the main one this year.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Elizabeth Maxwell, I did a movie with her in Austin a couple of years ago. She's great.
Oh,
she's awesome.
Yeah, getting to meet them was so fantastic. And getting to go to Oz Comic Con was like, I can see why everyone loves it so much. I know that, obviously, I know for the Comic Cons and everything, like, they've been so successful and everything. It's when people think of obviously like the really big comic conventions out there in the world, the biggest ones that pop into mind for them is obviously Supernova, which we've got here in Australia, of course, which that is one of the biggest ones they have. But everywhere, particularly up in America, they've got obviously San Diego Comic Con and New York Comic Con as well. But when it comes to like any of the comic conventions that you've attended over the years, especially from like interacting with fans and stuff, have there been any experiences that really stood out to you from like any of the conventions that you've attended?
Well, every convention or store signing or whatever is going to have its own, special, unique experience connected to it. But I do find that internationally I've met some really, really cool people. So Australia, New Zealand, with Armageddon, the cons I do in the UK, Scotland, those are really, really great. Not to disparage anyone in the US, they're all great as well. But there's definitely a politeness factor that comes, especially in the UK, and I guess Australia too, I noticed it, that you don't necessarily get at New York Comic Con. You know what I mean? It's just a different culture thing. But the fans have been great. They've been really, really awesome. And as I get older and my fan base gets older, say from like Digimon, which I did 22 years ago, now I've got people coming up to me and they're saying, hey, here's my kid. I'm introducing my kid to Digimon. So they're continuing, the fan base of the shows that I worked on. That's pretty cool.
That's fantastic, and that's definitely true in that regard. Which, speaking about, of course, with some of the roles that you've done, looking across at like your entire career or your filmography, so to speak, whether it's been live action, but mostly in the animation side of things, as mentioned about before, you've worked across like a variety of well-known titles from Bleach to Digimon. But if you had to pick down a list of like some of the roles that are really big deep cuts from your career, that you feel, what are some of the roles that are like such deep cuts from your career that you feel like are not discussed about enough or given enough attention from a general fan's perspective?
Well, I mean, deep cuts usually for me just usually means unknown. So that doesn't necessarily mean they were great performances, right? Or that long of a performance. But I do love it when people remember me from Tales of Symphonia as Lloyd Irving, the video games, Tales of Symphonia. Mostly because I took over for somebody. I didn't know that someone else was doing that role in the first couple games. So there was a huge backlash online that, that person had been replaced or whatever. I don't know the circumstances. So I used to carry a little plushie around of Lloyd Irving to all the conventions. And the first person that would mention that they knew me from the game and that they liked me, I would give them the plushie. So that got expensive, but so yeah, I mean, Lloyd Irving, I was in One Punch Man as Garugenshoop, which is a little odd. Let's see, no one ever talks about Bokomon in Digimon Frontier Season 4, which I loved. I loved his voice. He was really cool. But for the most part, I would say that people know my work and that they like it. Some of them remember stuff that I don't even remember, which I love. They'll bring up a DVD or a manga or something. I'm like, am I in this? And so I have to, Google myself to see if I actually did the title. So yeah, I mean the fans, man, they know everything. They research, they're invested, and so I really appreciate that.
That's definitely true, and that's really fantastic in that regard. And also looking back across, like when from a time when, of course, like cartoons and anime in particular used to be on like network television at that time, especially on like really big networks at the time, whether it was through Cartoon Network, like Toonami, or like through Adult Swim, which are the
Yeah.
programs within Cartoon Network. What was it like seeing like any of the work that you've done appear onto like any of the programs at Cartoon Network at that stage? And especially like hitting not just in the US but on an international level as well, whether it was like anime that were going to become like really big names or ones that many like myself included and many of us that grew up through the early 2000s, they'd be like, wow, that this series is cool. I can't believe people are not really talking about it enough.
Yeah, well, there's two things. So when I started Digimon, it was here in the U.S. It was on something called Fox Kids, and then I think it may have moved to Jetix or Disney Channel or something like that. But um, other like cable networks didn't even exist. I'm not even sure that Cartoon Network was that big when I was doing something on Fox Kids. So yeah, we were on network television. I was doing television promos for regular TV, no internet television, nothing like that. So it was very cool. I was really excited to be on television. Um, and everyone knew about Digimon. It was kind of we were kind of like combating with Pokemon, of course, at the time for eyeballs and viewership. But the show that really didn't take off in the U.S. was crazy popular in New Zealand, and that was a show called Battle Beatamon. So, do you remember the show? So,
Yes.
I played Yamato Delgado, and I did a convention in Auckland and Wellington, Armageddon Convention, and the fans were crazy for this show. And in the U.S., no one cared. No one cared about that show at all. So it was really cool and weird to see how just different continents, different places really had different fan bases. And that's still true. Like you'll go to a convention and some people will not mention Monokuma or Octagawa or Yumachika, and it's all Krillin or it's all Shima from Blue Exorcist. And every single con I go to, it's always different.
That's absolutely true in that regard. And it's funny that you mentioned about with Battle Beater Man because that was actually one of the first shows that, or one of the anime that was screening on Toonami at the time, back in the early 2000s in Australia. And that was really my intro to your work at that stage. So
Wow.
I was really familiar with Battle Beater Man, and I gone back and watched the first season at that time in its entirety. And I actually have one of the Battle Beater Man that I got 4 years ago when I interviewed you the first time. It was after the first interview that I did with you, and when we were going through that whole craziness during COVID-19, and I saw,
Yeah.
and I remembered because they used to sell those like back, I think when the series was screening in Australia at the time, because I know for a fact that with screening on like a lot of big networks at the time, it was like that was I think the last time that I think like the younger generation, or at least during that stage, was when they all just kind of flocked to each other at like this one network and saying, oh hey, here's this anime that's on there, here's Bleach, here's Ghost in the Shell, here's Adult Swim, which shows off like a lot of adult anime, where it wasn't like before the internet started coming into play and everything, and obviously before streaming services started coming into play, where obviously when the internet started happening is when everything started spreading out and sort of getting segmented in that regard.
Yes.
And now obviously with streaming coming into play, it's sort of bringing things back a little bit to that sort of thing where everyone is coming together under this one streaming service or whatever streaming service you're going to and seeing the exact same thing, but still having that sense of it kind of spread out and sort of segmented in a way. Because when you had a show like go onto Cartoon Network under Toonami or Adult Swim, I thought of it as like that's like it wasn't just like, Digimon or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or any of the really big names that everyone is so familiar with, but a lot of the big anime titles that to many fans, like really fans that go for those real deep cuts in the anime world, or the titles that are not spoke about enough, is like that's pretty big in my opinion. That tells you that it's big. It's really big.
Yeah, and it's funny too. You mentioned how everything's kind of in one place. So that's not necessarily, maybe it was true, but now that Prime, Crunchyroll, like everyone's doing anime, original anime. We're getting stuff from France now and Germany. So it's definitely spreading out again. So shows are kind of like clamoring to get attention. You know what I mean? There's so many places to watch anime and so much content out there that people have, oh, it's on my list. Oh, I've bookmarked it, right? And if you've got like One Piece on your list or Naruto or Bleach on your list, you better set aside 8 to 10 years to watch it all. You know what I mean? So some stuff is just never going to get watched, right? Myself included. So that's just the nature of the business.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely true in that regard. And it actually reminds me of an interview that happened with Genndy Tartakovsky, who many people remember as the creator for Samurai Jack, for Primal, and a whole range of other cartoon shows, as one of the most notable storytellers and animators, not just in animation, but just in storytelling in general, and entertainment just in general, where he spoke about with the rise of streaming services, and especially with how much content is coming across from a lot of animators like all over the world and stuff, it feels like in a way it's kind of making a lot of the animators that really stand out like above the rest. I'm trying to think of the exact quote that he was saying from that, where he spoke about how he felt like that because of how much content is getting pushed from a lot of really big film studios, not just in big film studios, but anywhere around the world, that to try and stand out above the rest is really, really difficult in that fact. And especially with the quality of animation, because of how much content it is, the quality starts to suffer in the process because of how much is getting out there and stuff. And he feels like, in a way, that for quality animation in the future, a lot of them are going to go either to independent studios or they'll start doing it independently and stuff. Because now, obviously, because of the access to technology and social media and YouTube at our expenses, like that sort of thing. How do you personally feel about that sort of thing, especially versus the way that like animation was back then when you first started in your career?
Everything's changed exponentially since I began. Obviously, I love the access to technology because then it allows people who are talented and creative the tools to create. When I was a kid and I wanted to make a movie, I had to have the Super 8 camera or the 8mm camera. You know what I mean? You couldn't film a feature film on your iPhone, right? So now the only thing stopping you is creativity and some friends, that can help you light and sound and all, or storyboard or draw. So I think it's great. It's like a renaissance of not only anime content, but art, television, movies, music, because the way to create it is affordable and the way to promote it is accessible with social media and the internet and all that stuff. So I think we're seeing a lot of really, really talented creators come from that. Now, that being said, the big people, the studios, Sony, Amazon Prime, they're going to try to control it, right? They're either going to try to outbid, purchase, buy, or what have you, squash the little guy. So we just got to keep fighting and see that, talent and creativity comes through.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely true in that regard, in that sense. And also because speaking about in the fact, in yourself, having worked across in the live action sense and in the animation sense, and not just in that, but in a lot of other aspects of the entertainment industry, that early this year, there was, of course, a strike that occurred with the animation and the video game industries, which, is that still ongoing? Has that not ended yet?
So the video game strike is still on. However, there are a lot of what's called like side letters and agreements with already existing games, if they're adhering to the AI restrictions and stuff. So some things are moving forward, some things aren't. It's a weird way of kind of like watering down the strike and watering down the striking power. It's a huge mess. And we just came off the other SAG strike. There was, I believe, like a Teamster strike, the crews and stuff. It's a huge mess in LA. To say nothing of the fact that now they're saying, whereas there used to be maybe 10 shows that were being written at a studio, now it's one. Tax breaks for Los Angeles or for California in general are really, really bad for production companies. That's why they're going to Atlanta. That's why they're going to New Mexico. Now they're going to Europe to do TV shows. So Hollywood proper that we used to know is really kind of slowly dying. I hope it doesn't, but signs are not great.
Right. Just want to know on that part, because I know there's been all that talk that's been going about with the strike occurring with the animation and the video game industries, but also because of last year with the writers and actors strike, which was which was a long strike that lasted
Long strike.
It lasted for quite a long time and everything. But having worked across like all the aspects of the entertainment industry in that sense, especially on the animation front, do you feel, because of all the stuff that's been occurring with animation in the last couple of years, as we've been talking about with the really big film studios, did you feel as though like a strike was sort of imminent with the animation and the video game and the voice acting industry, like people that work within those two industries? Did you feel like a strike was sort of bound to happen at that stage because of everything that was occurring in the last couple of years with animation from these really big film studios?
Yeah, I didn't feel the strike being imminent necessarily from animation. I felt it being imminent from the strength and growing of AI. So I thought that would not only happen with manufacturing and recreating voices for animation and video games, but then also they're scanning people using their digital scan for films, right? For on-camera stuff. So I really thought that that would create a strike. And it did. Yeah.
Right. Well, obviously, I know in the fact, because I know that's been a discussion that's been occurring with a lot of voice actors over the last couple of years. Even though AI technology has existed for quite a long time, it's only begun to, for sure, it's only begun to get a lot more notice and attention in the last couple of years. And I've had this across with like all the actors that I've interviewed previously, where they've spoken about the whole AI of it all and stuff. What I will say though, because I don't know fully the answer to that question on the future of the industries and all that kind of stuff, what I will say is I've been doing this channel for like, as of next year, will officially been 10 years since I started this channel.
Wow.
So I will say this straight off the bat, that anyone was to ever ask me, and I've said this across all the interviews I've done, I will say it to the day I die, why do you still continue to do what you do on the channel? Why do you still go to the comic conventions? For a couple of things. I go primarily to meet the voice actors. They're my rock stars right there. And I do this channel to express the part of myself that is outside of the music side of things, to be part and show my support to the pop culture community, but most importantly, to bring more attention and show my support to the animation and the voice acting industry. That's why I still do what I do.
I appreciate that. And then it's people like you and it's fans that will keep the humanity, basically, keeping this industry going, because that's what we have to hold on to. You know, they want to turn us all into robots or reproductions of what we did 10 years ago. So yeah, so I appreciate that.
That's no problem at all. And I think also in the fact of like hearing the stories about like what's been going in, like going back to what Gendy Tartakovsky was talking about, that I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of actors, especially not just like big A-list actors, but any actor just in general, or anyone within the entertainment industry, will start to go down the independent route, as opposed to going through like the really big like mainstream or big film studios to get the job done and stuff. Because we've seen a lot of actors that have gone down the route of independent films and stuff. Like Oscar Isaac is a good example. Robert Pattinson is another good example of that, before he got starred in the Batman movies, where he stepped away from the big Hollywood stuff to focus on indie projects. Brie Larson is another good example of that. So we're starting to see a lot of actors going down that route and sort of not necessarily stepping away from the big Hollywood productions, but not doing it on the regular quite as much. Just because
go
ahead.
I was just gonna say also too, you've got them going to stage too, because like actors want to act, right?
Yeah.
So next year you've got Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington in Othello on Broadway. You know, Jonathan Bailey in London for, I think it's Richard III. So they're going back to the stage because they want to act, and you'll never be able to take that away from them, right? Unless we have, holograms on stage, which don't quote me on that. But yeah, independent. I mean, people have been doing independent films. Big names have been doing independent films and television shows for a long time because they love the project. They want to act. Some people, as they're getting in their older years, maybe they're not getting the roles that they used to get, so they still want to get out there and get their face out there. So there's a bit of ego and selfishness combined, but still they're putting out really good content that's not being, controlled by the big studios and the money.
Right. And especially because of how much the industry has changed versus like when you first started earlier in your career. If you were an up and coming actor at this point of where the industry is now, would you see would you want to try, like, what would you still go for the methods that used to work, that still work to this day forward, like networking, connecting with people, but also to adapting to what's going on at the same time to make it in this industry? But how hard do you think it is now to make it in this industry, like with the amount of technology and social media at our fingertips versus what it was like back in, like, let's say the 80s and the 90s, for example?
Right. So they were both difficult. Like, it was difficult when I was starting just because I was sending out physical headshots, photos in manila envelopes to agents, right? Like, that's what we would do. We'd go to in-person auditions and have our headshots. Networking meant going to parties. There was no computers when I started, and no Facebook. So now you have all access to all that stuff, digital. It's easy to audition at home, but there's also so many people doing it, right? And life is expensive too. So you see a lot of kids who come from wealthy families, right? And you think, oh, mommy and daddy got them into it, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes that's the case. But also, they're not working a 40-hour-a-week job. They're not struggling to pay their bills while they're trying to go to acting classes or perform in a play that pays them $7 a night. So the people that have money have that freedom of time to really push towards their career. That's the same then as it is now. So I don't know what I would do differently. If I could bring my experience with me and be 18 years old, I think I would do pretty well, because I'm a pretty good businessman, I'm pretty savvy, and I'm a pretty good networker. But I had to learn that all. You know what I mean? I was green and I was young. I was like Takata, a little kid trying to figure things out.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And of course, with having worked across like a variety of, as mentioned about before, having worked across in both the live action and animation sense, whether it was guest starring on like Australia's Kath and Kim or like appearing on the Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno show, but also working across in a lot of other aspects of the entertainment industry, what parts of the industry do you feel like are not talked about enough or given enough recognition or attention in the way that they should?
You mean things that I've done in the industry, or things, just the industry in general?
I'd say just the industry in general.
Things that aren't talked about, gosh. I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, right? So I'm a big theater nerd. I have discovered a bit of a crossover in the anime nerd and the theater nerd. They do connect. They definitely do. But when you get into the whole TV film world, that doesn't necessarily cross over into the fan base I have with anime and comics and stuff like that necessarily. But I think everyone's talking about it. I think entertainment is so not tangible, but accessible now. So I think everyone is talking about the next show and the next actor. I think theater is probably still niche and on the back burner for a lot of people, which is nice when you get Nick Jonas performing in the last 5 years, on Broadway. So that's bringing some people into Broadway, the Screaming Girl musical fans. But no, I definitely think any aspect of entertainment is talked about and recognized. But I will say, especially in America, we are at risk of them taking away theater and music and all those things from our schools, which is really scary because that's where I learned. I was learning in 2nd and 3rd grade. So I hope that doesn't continue. I hope we can hold on to that.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And especially like another aspect of the industry that I feel like has not been given enough attention up until I think it was actually thanks to this movie and also thanks to Ryan Reynolds when he did Deadpool and Wolverine. Like, especially from an awards ceremony perspective, it was when they did the full... this wasn't to do with Ryan Reynolds, but it was actually to do with Ryan Gosling when he did the Fall Guy movie, where the director for that is a stunt coordinator, and he did that movie as kind of a reference to the fact that stunt coordinators are not given enough attention in the way that they should from an entertainment perspective. And even Ryan Reynolds himself said that he wants to create a category in the awards ceremony for stunt coordinators.
It's so weird that we don't have that. My friend Greg Fitzpatrick is a stuntman, and I worked at Universal Studios for a long time, so I knew all the stunt people from Waterworld and from the Wild West show. And I know people from Pirates of the Caribbean movies and stuff. So yeah, stunts. In fact, I think there was either a fight that they either won or lost, getting a best stunt category in the Emmys. I don't know if that happened or not. But yeah, stunts, casting directors, or best casting, that was another thing people don't talk about. There's a lot of people that work their butts off in the industry to make things happen behind the scenes, makeup, wardrobe, locations, all that stuff, that maybe don't get recognized.
Absolutely. And I think definitely in the fact of seeing like an actor like Ryan Reynolds try to do that for his fellow people, not just for the Deadpool movies, but for all the other movies that he's done, but also for a lot of the people that work in all projects where that is relevant to that. I think hats off to him for that. And that's the shining example of what he is, of honestly what I feel like, and I've mentioned this across as like a bit of a joke, but I'm also serious about it at the same time. If there was an actual board for Hollywood just in general, Ryan Reynolds would definitely be one of the people on that board, without a doubt.
Completely agree. Now, obviously, you know that I did a movie with Ryan Reynolds, Buying the Cow, and I will just say that I was a nobody, right? I lucked out. I got this great part. It's just me and Ryan in 2 or 3 scenes, and he was the coolest, nicest, most friendly, welcome guy that I had ever met. Because I was nervous, not only to be in the movie, but to be working with him. He wasn't the Ryan Reynolds that we know now. He had done Van Wilder. I don't even think he'd done Blade or Amityville Horror yet, but still, he was still famous, right? So I was nervous, but he was a great guy. So yes, hats off to Ryan for sure.
Absolutely. Now let's get across into talking about a couple of the roles. Now, first one I should start off by saying, because you just made an announcement about this recently, I would like to say a huge congratulations on you getting the role of Makoto Kawashita. Is that how it's pronounced?
Kawashita, yes.
Yeah,
Kawashita.
a huge congratulations on getting that role. How did that end up coming about, and what was it that drew you to that character in particular?
So this is for Mission Yozakura Family that's playing on Hulu, at least in the U.S. It may be in a different place in different regions, obviously. So I'm trying to think of when I auditioned for this. It was a while ago. It's done through a studio where I do other work. So I think this is probably through Bang Zoom, where I do Blue Exorcist, and I did a bunch of other stuff, the Danganronpa games. So they sent me the audition, and I read for it. And at the time, I think the audition, his lines were pretty, just kind of middle of the road, right? They didn't really say much about it. Not to give away any spoilers, but I did it, and I guess they liked, the sound of my voice, blah, 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 and I got the role. But as we move on and I'm recording the series, he's definitely like peeling away an onion. There's different aspects to his personality. He's much more interesting than I ever thought he was. I'll just say that.
That's fantastic, and well, definitely looking forward to the series when it comes out. It sounds like it's gonna be an absolute blast, and absolute congrats on getting the role as well. You
Thanks.
truly deserve it. And another congratulations in order for coming back as Yumi Chika in the Thousand Year Blood War Revival series, which has now started season 3 or part 3 of the Revival series. How did it feel to come back through the Revival series, getting to tell the final, like the last bit of the manga?
It was twofold. So first of all, that was like, I think 8 years. I'm not sure how long it was quiet. It was quiet for a long time, right? So to find out that it was coming back, I was so excited. So I was excited, and then I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to reprise my role, because, a lot of shows are going to Texas, right? So I was afraid that we wouldn't be recording it in LA. So we recorded it in LA. I got the email that I was going to be in it. I was very excited. And then I got to the studio, and for those that have seen the first, arc or whatever of the show, I think I was in 1 episode. So I was like, well, this is great. I'm back, but now I'm gone again, right? Unemployed again. So I was excited and then disappointed. But I believe, from what I hear, according to the manga, you will be seeing a lot more of Yumechika in this next section. So I love him. He was one of the roles I did starting my career, and so it was really nice to kind of have that little going down memory lane again.
Absolutely, and it was really a shock to me when I first heard that they would be adapting the series, but also there was a lot of talk from the author as well on how much he's been trying to get Bleach off the ground for so long and everything. And
Oh wow.
and I think that's what I heard anyway. But now to see them finally adapting the Thousand Year Blood War series, especially to the level of animation that we have now, and getting most of the original cast members to come back for the series is a huge plus. So I'm so excited for the series. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And also in that regard, that there have been a couple of casting changes that occurred with that. Like Jameson Price obviously not coming back as the voice of Chad, for wanting to get an actor of color, I believe, to voice the character. And there was all that controversy that was happening with Wendy Lee. I think it was with Wendy Lee at the time, or something to do with that fact, or some casting announcement that was made for one of the characters in the earlier series around that time. Like, were you aware of what was happening, like, behind the scenes when it came to the other characters, or were you just focused entirely on your part with playing Yumi Chika?
Yeah, so what normally happens is we talk a lot, not to each other, but like there's message boards and stuff about shows on Facebook or the internet or X or Twitter or whatever the heck it's called. So I'm not directly connected to any kind of drama. Thank goodness, right? I don't have time for it. But sometimes you will read stuff. I didn't in either one of those cases, incidentally, but sometimes you'll see something. And so I usually just kind of like Google if there's anything going on with my character, with my casting, with my role, union stuff, whatever, see if there's any kind of controversy that I should know about. And thank goodness there hasn't been. So I like to keep my hands clean and just keep my head down and do my job.
No, that's definitely true in that fact, but that's fantastic. And with coming back into the role of Yumi Chika, especially now since we're getting ready for season 3, of course, with coming back through the revival series or working on the revival versus working on the original, how different did it feel working on the revival versus the original series? Did it feel, because of it being a revival series, did you have to adjust the way that you perform this character because it's been so long since the original, or did it feel like slipping on a jacket that you hadn't worn necessarily in years?
That's a great question and a great way of putting it. Yumi Chika, Monokuma, Takato, Shima, all those characters I worked with for so long in the first place, right? So, finding the voice was really easy. So it wasn't difficult. They played some references for me. They had some vocal rest, right? What was odd, though, is that the animation is so different. It's much more beautiful, in my opinion, right? But the characters look different. So sometimes it'll throw you off a bit how you would normally place your voice or say a line, and it may not match the mouth flaps or the expressions. So that took a little bit of getting used to, how the behaviors maybe change a bit up in the characters.
Right. And also because of the fact of them doing the Thousand Year Blood War series, which is a much more intense, like, part of the manga, versus, like, not to say the rest of it is not intense, because it is, but that last arc in particular was so intense and so crazy that's like, okay, yeah, it's like I'm coming back into playing the same character, but there's some aspects I'm going to have to change just a little bit because of how crazy this entire thing is. But also, there's been a lot of reports going about, or a lot of articles going about, where people were asking the question, if Bleach as a series, talking not just with the 1,000 Year series, but the entire show just in general, should be given the One Piece treatment, where they'll do a remake of the Bleach series, because this year happens to mark the 20th anniversary of Bleach as a series. So that's where a lot of that talk has been going about a fair bit. How would you personally feel if they ever did a remake, like a remake of the Bleach series, the whole Bleach series, with the style of animation that is occurring in the revival series?
If I could do it, if they offered me the role, I would say it's great. If they recast me, I would say I hate it. I think that would be amazing. I would love that. I think that'd be really cool. I know, do you remember they completely redubbed Sailor Moon, right? But they used the original animation. They didn't redo the animation. That would be really awesome. I would love that.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned about that, because of course Sailor Moon got the exact same treatment when they did the reboot series through Sailor Moon Crystal, and doing it in like the style of animation that we have to this day versus the original animation that occurred in the 90s, of course. And now they're still going on with that series as of to this day. And I know for a fact that with One Piece, they're going to be doing a remake called The One Piece in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the series, knowing that the original show is still going on to this day forward. They haven't stopped. Oda has not slowed down on the manga yet. It's still going incredibly strong to this day forward. So when I first heard that, I was like, wait, what? And then when I heard about them talking about with Bleach of doing this, giving it the exact same treatment as they're doing for the remake of like One Piece, or doing the same thing with the Sailor Moon series, I felt like in a way I could see that happening, but maybe wait until after the revival series and then start getting that happening.
Yeah, and also too, if they're gonna remake One Piece, like you and I are both gonna be dead by the time that show is over. Like it's gonna go on forever. Like it's gonna be never ending. That's crazy.
Well, I know for a fact that that we're into the final saga of the manga at this point, so it's not that long to go on. And I know we've had the live action series this year, which, speaking a little bit on that, there was a lot of reports going about of Warner Brothers developing a live action Bleach movie. Now, I know we had the live action Bleach film that occurred in Japan back in 2018, and this just came out just fairly recently. And there's been a lot of the cast and crew that have been reacting to the news and stuff. How do you personally feel about that, of them developing a live action Bleach movie, especially considering the results that we've got in the last couple of years from One Piece to Yu Yu Hakusho, where they've started to break the curse of the live action adaptation? Do you see that as like being a success, or just be like, I'm not so sure about that?
I mean, fans are very loyal, right? So I think it's going to take a special fan to watch it and accept it, even if it's good. Me personally, I love it, and I think that any attention on the franchise is good, and it keeps the anime alive, it keeps the merchandise alive. I think it's really great. I would love if they did that with Bungo. Eyeballs are eyeballs, and attention is attention, and any of it is good. But I would hope that it would be produced well.
Absolutely. Well, I know for a fact they've started to discuss, and obviously get into discussion stages about a whole bunch of anime adaptations, like obviously doing a Naruto movie with Daniel the director of the Shang-Chi movie, who's also doing Spider-Man 4. They're obviously going to be thinking about doing a live-action One Punch Man movie at some stage. And now, of course, with the discussion of a live-action Bleach movie, it's like, thanks to the success, I think it's because of the success of One Piece, and especially with the One Piece series in particular, it's them saying, you know what? If they manage to do this successfully, let's give this another shot. And I
think it's great. And they've got sort of a built-in audience. They've got a built-in skeptical audience. So if it's not good, these kids will let them know, right? But if it's good, man, they've got a huge audience.
Absolutely. No, without a doubt. Absolutely without a doubt. And my question out there to you, Brian, also the listeners out there, let me know in the comments below, what do you want to see them do in the live-action Bleach movie, and what other anime that Brian Beacock has worked on would you personally want to see adapted as a live-action movie or TV show? I personally would love to see them do a Battle Beater Man TV show. That would be really cool to see that.
It would be great. I would love that. Of course, I would love to see, Digimon Tamers would be amazing. A lot of CGI, obviously. But what I would really love is a live-action Danganronpa. I mean, come on, a killer bear. I mean, it would be amazing. It'd be like Howard the Duck, except good.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic. And to all the listeners out there as well, leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Brian Beacock or any of the cast members from Bleach make a Stan Lee cameo in the live-action Bleach movie, if that is going to happen, or in any of the anime projects that they've all starred in together. That would be so amazing.
Amazing. I'll do it for free. I'll tell you right now. Screen Actors Guild be damned. I'll do it for free.
But no, that would be fantastic. That would be absolutely wonderful. And of course, as we were speaking a little bit about going into Sailor Moon, of course, that one of the most notable roles in that, you were cast in as Helios in Sailor Moon Eternal. How did that end up coming about, and what was it like stepping into the world of Sailor Moon for the first time?
Well, I had been in Sailor Moon before as Alan or Ale in the redub of the original series. You know, the guy who played the flute and had a strange relationship with his sister and gets killed by a tree, whatever. Very strange. So that was years ago. And then I was just asked to audition for Helios and Pegasus for the Netflix film, and I booked it. And I think Todd Haberkorn was the director. He was great. And I didn't record very often. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 sessions for that. But it was great. I mean, Sailor Moon is a franchise that I had just kind of like dipped my toe into. And it was nice to be a part of it again.
Absolutely, but no, that is fantastic and everything, and still really amazing to see Sailor Moon going on really, really strongly, even after the Crystal series and everything, which of course, as we spoke about, was the reboot for the original show and everything. But because of how important, and also because of how important Sailor Moon was to not just to anime, but really particularly to the magical girl genre of anime, especially occurring in the 90s. When the magical girl genre was really flowing at its highest, but also a lot of mecha anime as well occurring at that stage, and for it to have such a big presence as that, hats off to them for that. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's very powerful now. Right? It's very strong and powerful. I went to a Sailor Moon convention. I think it was called Pretty Heroes in Canada, and the whole convention is Sailor Moon. It was really fun.
I can imagine that, but that's fantastic. Now, some of the other most notable roles that you've done in the last few years was I'm probably mispronouncing this here, which is Bungo Stray Dogs 1. Is that how it's pronounced?
Oh yeah, yes.
And Stand By Me Doraemon, and also returning to the Blue Exorcist series as well. What was it like to work on all those projects, especially coming back into the Blue Exorcist series?
So Blue Exorcist, no spoilers, but coming back as Shima, again, this show was dead for like 7 years or whatever, came back for season 3. I had no idea. Manga readers know what happened. But it was some of the most difficult acting I've ever had to do. I'll just say that my character, Shima, shows certain sides of his personalities to certain people and tells certain truths. So in performing that, the director would say, "No, you're giving too much away, Brian," or "You're not telling us enough, Brian." It was really crazy hard, but so much fun. So season 3 was amazing. Stand By Me Doraemon, we did, I think, 2 movies, and then we also did the TV series Doraemon, and I play Sneetch. That title, or that franchise, had been dubbed in every single language for years. It's like Japan's Mickey Mouse, this robot cat, had been dubbed in every language except English. So when Disney bought the title and we dubbed it into English, it was in New York Times. It was huge news, right? And that was really fun. And then the other one, Bungo Stray Dogs 1, is the little chibi character versions of the regular character I play, Octagawa, in Bungo Stray Dogs. So that was fun, except difficult because I'm used to my character being really evil and snide and wry and sarcastic, but now he's this tiny little guy, right? So I had to try to put my regular voice into this little baby thing. So that was kind of like doing this. But it's a funny series. Bungo Stray Dogs 1 is amazing. I hope they do more of that.
No, but that's absolutely fantastic though. And one of the other most notable shows that really caught my eye that you've done was the reboot of Rurouni Kenshin, playing the character of Bashimi.
I don't remember that. Wait. Maybe I do. That might have been one of the ones where I was in the session for like 2 days is all. I don't remember that one.
Well, there was, for anybody out there that's ever watched, that is familiar with Rurouni Kenshin, it's obviously the famous samurai series that occurred back in the 90s, and they did the reboot series just last year, and they had been talking about that series for such a really long time and stuff, and especially because at that time, there was a lot of controversy that was happening with that show, particularly with the author of the manga getting in such serious trouble. I'm not going to get too much into this, otherwise they'll probably take the video down for that. But there was a lot of controversy that was attached to that series at the time, and especially when I heard about them obviously doing the show, I've seen clips from the show. It's amazing and everything. I've watched bits of the English dub. It's fantastic and stuff and everything. But obviously Bashimi, as being one of the members that belongs to one of the main that belongs to the team of one of the main characters in the show. I'm not going to spoil it too much for anyone out there who hasn't seen it yet. But I've watched the original. It's fantastic. Derek Stephen Prince did an amazing job with it. He did an amazing job with that performance and everything. And I've also watched a bit of Bashimi in the reboot series where it was said that you were the voice of that character, and it sounds fantastic. It was amazing.
I entirely could be that character. I just don't remember it. So I wish you would spoil it because I don't remember. I'll have to watch it.
No, that's okay. But with any sort of series that you've ever worked on in the past, especially like ones that later on have controversy attached to it in any way or form, how have you personally tried to deal with that sort of thing?
I can't necessarily remember many that had controversies, like the character or behind the scenes, like the writer or the producer, right? I think all the characters that we've played in anime should have controversy because they're all crazy and they're all terrible and they're killing people and all that stuff, right? But I don't really remember being part of a title that was controversial. Not to say that it doesn't happen, right? There's controversial people in our industry, right? And I've been very conscious about just staying away from any kind of trouble or controversy in general. I mean, at conventions, in my work, in the jobs that I do, in my social media, and that really, it makes it easy to sleep at night, and it makes you not have to worry about anything. So
I think that's a good approach to attach onto that. And I know for a fact that with the dub with Rurouni Kenshin, that with a lot of the English actors, they've actually donated a lot of the money that they earned from working on the sessions to charities that were relevant to what was going on with the author at the time. Just to say, we know about what's going on with this, we know about that, we're doing our bit to help out the people that were involved in this kind of thing. So, and
wow.
I think honestly in the fact of like, and I know that's kind of like a very sort of really difficult, really complicated sort of place to be in with any sort of project that has controversy attached to it, like the whole art versus separating the art from the artist kind of thing. But also when you've got, like, for example, as we were talking about with fans earlier, now in the last few years, I think not just before the pandemic, I think it wasn't just during when the pandemic started, but before the pandemic occurred at that stage, where we've had like a lot of fans, so to speak, not like a lot of the people that claim to be fans and all that kind of stuff. And I know that's probably going to get me a lot of controversy thrown at me for saying that, but I don't care. And because that's just the kind of person I am, just to call out bullshit on things. Anyway, but especially in the last few years, we've had a lot of fans that have been attacking like actors on a verbal sense for portraying certain characters and all that kind of stuff. And not just a famous example of that is, of course, like with the actor who played Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars, but also in the last few years, like with The Last of Us Part 2, when that game came out, was Laura Bailey, who most people remember from Fruits Basket and a whole range of other roles, where she got attacked very like harshly for one character that she played in particular during the game and stuff. It was crazy. And like, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it is crazy. It is crazy to think that, number one, we're responsible for for anything that happens with the content that we do. That being said, yes, we do need to choose what we are, involved in. But also, you could choose to do a job and you do 2 years of it, and then season 3 it's completely different. So you could quit, or there's just all kinds of stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't want to give actors the responsibility necessarily for the content, but also it's content. It's fiction. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on the responsibility of entertainment, right?
Yeah.
The responsibility of entertainment to be responsible and to teach and all that stuff, but then also adversely to just be entertainment. Right? Now, to attack someone online, I just like, I don't get it.
Absolutely. No, I think that's definitely true in that regard. And I remember when all that sort of stuff was happening around that stage, because I know there's been a lot of articles in the last couple of, actually fairly recently, from actors that have worked in such big franchises, not necessarily animation, but a lot of pop culture stuff, that have been asking for studios to take accountability in fans' response to this kind of thing, because it's one thing to attack the character, but it's another thing to attack the actor for race and all that kind of stuff. And especially when that whole stuff was happening with Laura Bailey and all that at the time, I actually tweeted out to her and said, any fan that ever does that sort of thing to you is no real fan at all. You are one of the best voice actresses working in the industry today, and that proves without a doubt that with that character you played, we're meant to hate her because you did an amazing job with her.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I will say, if I look at a project and they say this project is about ... I'm like, oh no, thank you. I'll say no at the get-go, right? But if your character does something or says something, I mean, Yuma Chica has said some terrible things in Bleach, right? So if people want to attack me for that, that's fine. But I didn't write it, whatever. But yeah, if something is so inherently against what I believe, I won't do it. I don't know that was the case with Laura. I don't know anything about it. But I do know that sometimes a fan will have trouble differentiating the line between reality and fiction.
Absolutely. And I think also in the fact, I know it's obviously still ongoing to this day forward, and it only kind of was, even though it's existed like long before that, it was only exasperated or like intensified, obviously because of the pandemic and the lockdowns at that stage and all that kind of stuff. So it's like there's only one way to go from something like that down.
I know. It's so unfortunate because I mean I've got some crazy good fans. Like my fans on Insta and TikTok and Twitter and stuff, they're so amazing. And sometimes there's little fights, not between me, but between themselves, and I try to squelch that and stuff. But it's just really nice when everybody can get along, you know what I mean? But I'm very fortunate, and I don't take it lightly that I've got a really, really cool fan base.
Absolutely. And I think that's the way that I think every fan base, regardless of what kind of project it is or what kind of franchise that it is, needs to have that. Yes, you can have discussions about this kind of thing, but don't take it to the point of like just attacking someone just because they got a different opinion to something like that. We all have opinions, right? It's like a friend of mine once said to me, and yeah, it's like a friend of mine once said to me about that, where he said, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
Yes, true. True. Yeah, so don't be one. No, conversations are great. Like, discussions are great. I love that. I love that, to hear other people's point of views and stuff. But, keep it civil.
Absolutely. Now, going back a little bit before, as you were talking about with Digimon and Pokemon, now, as we know, there's been, going back onto the whole debate side of things, there's been so many debates over the years on the whole Pokemon versus Digimon side of things, which is funny because we've seen a lot of actors that have started in the Pokemon world go over to the Digimon side of things, whether it was like Tara Sands and all that, and even some actors going from the Digimon side of things to the Pokemon side of things as well. So, nice little crossover right there. Have you ever noticed like any of the debates and all that kind of stuff on the whole Pokemon versus Digimon thing, or have you always tried to, you know what, I'm not going to get involved in this, I'd just rather let them deal with that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I know people have their favorites, but that's their favorite, that's what they like. I experience that a lot at conventions, where someone will see either a Takato print or whatever, and like, yeah, I was more of a Pokemon fan. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I wish Digimon had a Digimon Go game, right? But I never got to cross over to Pokemon, and I'm actually, oddly that you say that, I'm trying to make that happen now. I'm trying to talk to them to see if I can go, and a couple roles, whatever. I think it'd be really fun to be a part of that world. But no, I think it's a pretty friendly animosity amongst the two fan bases, right?
Absolutely.
And each fan base is rabid. Like they're stronghold on what they love, which is great. That's the way it should be.
Absolutely. And no, that would be fantastic. And hey, as we were talking about before, Digimon actors going to Pokemon actors going over to Digimon and stuff. It's just going bringing things back around full circle.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. That would be absolutely fantastic. And of course, final question, without going into any particular spoilers, what's next for Brian Beacock for the fans to know about? What else have you got going on in your life?
So let's see. I'm filming a TV show next Tuesday. Can't talk about it. It's a small part, but it's going to be fun. I'm filming a TV show. I am still obviously going to be working on Bleach. I'm still in Boruto, but I don't know. I can never know if we're done or whether it's continuing. I have no idea. There's rumors that there might be more Blue Exorcist. I don't know anything. Of course, Mission Yozakura Family, still doing that. I've got a couple games coming out and a couple new TV shows that I can't talk about yet, voiceovers. So yeah, a lot. There's a lot. And tons of conventions and store signings. So I hopefully be seeing all the fans all over the world.
Absolutely. No, that sounds fantastic. That sounds absolutely wonderful. Brian Peacock, thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor to have you back.
Thank you so much.
That's no problem at all. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Australia, I love Australia. Just thank you for your support for all art forms, anime, comic books, movies, TV, film, theater, and I hope I can see you at a convention soon.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Well, guys, if you'd like to know more about Brian Peacock, be sure to check him out on the Revival series, The 1,000-Year Blood War in Bleach, Season 3 starting. We're now, of course, getting ready for Season 3, and don't forget to check him out on all of his latest work. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out the links below, and don't forget to comment below, and let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite role of Brian Peacock's? Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Brian Beacock signing off. Bye for now.